Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm your lecturer, Noni Kumalo, and we are still in the process of chatting about compiling music. We're doing part 5 in this lesson, and we will be getting all this information from our next level radio textbook, which I've got here in front of me, and you are definitely going to need it because there's quite a number of stuff that we're going to be going through together in this textbook. All right, so this is lesson 45 of the 84 lessons that we're going to be having together. And I thought that we should look at activity 5 just to recap some of the things that we've done in class. That activity 5A you can find on page 181. I'll give you a second just to grab your textbook. The question is as follows. Explain the difference between adult contemporary radio, ACR, and contemporary hit radio music formats, and give an example of each in South Africa. All right, so let's turn to page 599 that has that explanation as well as examples provided in a South African context. The contemporary hits CHR format focuses on pop, rock, or dance hit. Such radio stations also play current bestsellers. They rely to a limited extent on playing golden oldies and recurrents. CHR radio stations mainly tend to play either rock music or dance music. Examples of such are 5FM, which is quite purely at its core still a CHR, right? But you could look at an urban CHR like your YFM, etc., as well as other extensions of CHR, which would be a Good Hope FM. The adult contemporary radio ACR format focuses on music for an adult audience. So whenever you get confused between the two, when you see A stands for adult, so you know we're definitely dealing with a more mature audience, which is definitely not you, but rather me. Okay. The music is softer than CHR. A significant difference between the two is that AC relies to a large extent on playing oldies and recurrents. Examples of such radio stations include Jacaranda FM, KFM, Kaya FM, Metro FM, 947, East Coast Radio. Okay, now let's take a look at question 2, which I'm quite fondly of, and we'll recap it just a little bit later on in this class, but it talks about visiting 5FM's website using the following link. We'll get into it, as I mentioned, in class just a little bit later on, and I'll take you through, I guess, some of the guidelines that we need to look at when we summarize today's lesson. Okay, so let's hold on to that for now and get into this lesson. Then what I'm going to need you to do, right, is to listen to 2 hours of a commercial radio station in South Africa. List all the songs you hear in the order that you heard them by, artist and the song title. If you're struggling with the titles like I do, I never know any title of any song, right? So I am definitely the kind of girl that is going to need a Shazam, even though I don't have it because I'm just a little bit late when it comes to technology. But please use Shazam if you're struggling with titles and artists. They'll give you exactly what it is that you're looking for, right? Attempt to figure out how many categories the station has. Try to place each song heard in a category, and then try to recreate a rotational clock as per table 5.4 on page 177. So let's turn to page 177 in the meantime. We did this in the previous lessons where you have a top of the hour layout as well as the bottom of the hour layout. Top of the hour consists of D1A, IF2, D1I, R, D2, 1, F1B. Those are all the codes that you have to use at the top of the hour. Then you can have bottom of the hour, you have D1, R, I, F2, D1, I, A, D2, I, F1, R, right? Same keys on either end, but obviously the songs will vary depending on their popularity and whether we want to kickstart the show with a hot song. All right, let's move on. Features and specialist music shows. Most radio stations tend to narrowcast rather than to broadcast. Narrowcasting means to aim a broadcast at a narrowly defined area or audience, thereby increasing their target market listener base. Even with the most targeted programming and consistent research, there will be periods where your listeners will not be available. This is the primary reason for specialist programming. Radio stations often have a variety of shows that are targeted to different audiences. Each of these shows' programming is different and tailored to the audiences likely to be listening at that time. The formula for specialist programming is as follows. Potential listeners during the low listener time on the station minus the current listenership, right? That will equal potential target programming. Talk radio stations run talk shows and segments throughout the entire week, with a change in programming on weekends switching to a lighter best of shows and sports lifestyle and music shows. All right, so let's look at 702. 702 has got quite serious content in the week with very little to no music in between the topics, in between shows. So they do a lot of current affairs. They deal with a lot of serious issues. However, when we turn into the weekend, the minute we hit 702 weekend breakfast, we already feel a bit lighter. The content is very light. And of course, we would then have the Sunday shows that have that feeling of old school R&B, completely different from the audiences and I guess the type of radio during the week. Weekend talk is usually lower as the lifestyle of the weekday listener is more relaxed on weekends. Look, we're not chasing traffic. We're not chasing where the rand is. We're not chasing petrol prices either on the weekend. We're with our families. We're relaxed and we're happy. So obviously the content has to change. When it comes to specialist shows, there are generally two types. The first one is block programming, and the second one is show programming. And the second one is show programming. Block programming occurs over weekends, focusing on specialty music programming. Show programming are compiled by specialists in the different genres, such as the 60s and the 70s, music from Africa and the diaspora. These shows ensure that their presenters are recognized experts in the field. Specialty programming requires a monitoring and tweaking. All right, so let's look at some examples. We've had a chat about features, and obviously Ask a Man being, one of the biggest favorite features that have been in South Africa for years. I don't know when it's ever going to be changed, but it's working. So as I say, if it ain't broke, don't change it. And again, one of my other favorites, Classic or Not from Anele and the Club. When we look at specialist music shows, we're looking at a 947 Top 40 powered by CTM, run by Zweli. We're looking at a FM 959 Elite 90 Metro FM sounds and stuff like that. Very old school kind of music. Not too sure if that's your cup of tea, but it is definitely mine. So the question that we had in example 5A spoke about, going to 5FM's website and truly finding out how submissions work. All right, let's go through it and then we'll do the example afterwards. How to submit. The music department no longer accepts physical music submissions. So you need to send your music to a radio station that is specific. This one is from Metro FM. So it says music at metrofm.co.za. All submissions are registered and details of the person submitting are recorded. All tracks are listed within the playlisting meeting, and the tracks are defined with regards to accepted, shelved, or held over. Playlist criteria. The song fits with the station format, right? Set in the music policy guidelines. The level of production is equivalent to that of international standards, should the track be local. The track is a radio edit. Example, the song duration, it doesn't swear. The next point, there are no explicit lyrics. The tracks have an excessive amount of strong language. The tracks are female friendly. And the tracks are of a duration of not more than 4 minutes in order to make it radio friendly. And no instrumental tracks will be accepted due to the station's set mandate, right? So that's how you submit your music when you're looking at a Metro FM. Let's take a look at music submissions that take place at 5FM, right? So when you submit your track, again, they're not going to be accepting CDs. Everything is much easier if it's done digitally. So for 5FM, you will send it to playlist at 5fm.co.za. You need to attach a 5 megabyte MP3, include a download link for a WAV version. So some people always ask you, do you want an MP3 version or do you want a WAV version? So you will then decide, but in this regard, they would want two versions that are going to work accordingly with the station policies. All songs need to be radio edits. There needs to be no swearing, and the song needs to preferably be under 4 minutes. So you'll find that a lot of radio songs run between 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes. Every now and again, you have a 5-minute song play, which is very, very long, but you'll find the song is very popular and well known. Include a short biography. The mail must not exceed 6 megabytes. Register the song with Sumro. And this becomes very important when it comes to the artist's royalties. If you don't register your song, then you really are losing out, because they really are trying to compensate artists accordingly. Artwork is essential to accompany a submission with the following requirements. And that must be done in a JPEG, which is a picture format. And the reason why they would want artwork to go along with this is that had they ever had to write an article or include your song in, a top charting as a top charting song, or it's part of the top 40, then they need artwork to accommodate or accompany rather your submission. So always make sure that you send in artwork as well. Now, this next message becomes very important, because a lot of stations receive calls and complaints from people saying, but nobody is responding to my email. All right, so this is what they say. Due to the high volume of music submissions and 5FM selection process, we cannot contact all of the artists with feedback. If you have not heard from 5FM after 6 weeks, please consider your submission unsuccessful. Music submissions are a wild concept in radio stations. So you'll find that some radio stations receive 200 submissions of music a day, right? So requirements are very important, and they will definitely negate your submissions if you don't follow the requirements as specified by the station and their policies. So this is how they try to mitigate random people sending things that aren't necessarily on a professional scale, making it even much harder for the music department to listen to the music and to really put on the artists that deserve it. Okay, so with this being said, I think it's great if we could go to question 5A at the back of your textbook, so that we can nicely revise this question over here about guidelines and submissions, right? So it says, look up the guidelines for submitting a song to 5FM, explain why you think they have these specific requirements for submissions, right? So here's some of the answers that you could be looking into, and that is question 2 of activity 5A. So the guidelines for submitting a song are as follows, right? We went through them as specified, and let's see what the feedback is according to them. Submit the song digitally to playlist at 5fm.co.za. The station only accepts songs in a digital format and will not take physical formats like CDs or USB sticks. Attach a 5 megabyte MP3. The file size should not be too small or too large. The audio quality must be sufficient to listen to. Include a download link for a WAV version. The station needs access to high quality versions of the file that is not included in the email. All songs need to be edited for radio. In other words, no swearing is allowed, and each song should preferably last less than 4 minutes. Stations may not broadcast foul language, and the song should be short for easy listening. Include a short biography. The DJs need background information about you when they want to introduce you as an artist. The mail must not exceed 6 megabytes. This is because large emails will slow down the station's email service. Register the song with the South African Music Rights Organization, SAMRO. This would ensure that you own the rights to the song and that it cannot be copied by another artist. Artwork is essential and needs to accompany a submission. Take note of the following requirements. Artwork is required for the purpose of providing publicity for you and your song. All right, so those are some of the reasons why those requirements are as they are. So let's continue with submissions and stakeholders. Music departments manage the intake of music at music radio stations with precision and care. They keep careful record of what they receive, both from whom and when. This information is important to make sure that a station is sticking to its format and to prevent preferential treatment when it comes to what music is picked for a playlist. Once music has been accepted, listened to, and locked by the music manager or compiler, the songs are optioned for playlisting. This is where you get happy as an artist. So let's wrap up submissions and stakeholdings and people that are just involved in the music industry, because it's so vast. The 4 major record labels known as the Big 4 are EMI, Sony Music Entertainment, Universal Music Group, and Warner Group. David Gresham Records, Super Black Tapes, known for their deep house. Gallo Records, known for South African pop and traditional music. Kalawa Jasmi, known for Kwaito. Siagaga, known for Boom. All right, so what I want us to do is, once we've compiled our music, once we've listened to the required hours of music, once we've Shazammed them, and once we have formatted them according to page 177 and the keys associated with them, I want us to feedback in class once we've met face to face. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message on our WhatsApp group for Radio 2. If it's a little bit more private, feel free to DM me as well on WhatsApp. You can also email me on nonhlanhla@boston.co.za. Otherwise, from me, it's over and out.